Hello and welcome back to Galactic Goddess Podcast and TV. I'm your host, Radhaa Nilia, and today we have a very special guest, Miss Selma Harwell. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Yes, we have so much to talk about. Not only are you a shaman, a healer, a facilitator in various ways, you're also a co-author in Awakening Starseed's book. And today we're going to talk about sacred wailing and what that means, because people probably don't even know what that means. So please tell us.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start that. My memory of that actually started from being a participant in this collaborative book of Awakening Starseeds, and it started with thinking about how differently I relate to death than most people, and I'm talking about D-E-A-T-H, right? Most people don't even want to say the word or think about it or anything. And
so
yeah, I got present to that when my mom died in November, because that's the way she was about death. Before she died, and my brother would ask her and what she wanted, and she would just go, she just would not say. And after 2 years of that, he finally said, okay, do you want me to take care of it? And she just went. So he was afraid. Then I discovered how afraid my daughter was of it, and I was like, wow, what's the difference here? And I thought, so I'm going to be writing about it, but I thought I'd share a little too, that what came up is that my first trauma was early on, like before I was 4. And because a hand was being held over my mouth, I could not breathe. So whether I passed out or passed away, I felt, relief by being in the arms of God and just held there and comforted. And so from then on, I had a sacred connection. And then as I wrote, I was remembering, okay, the next time I was present to death, I was about 7. And it was at my grandfather's funeral. And my grandmother and aunt, all of a sudden, I just was transfixed on the sound that was coming from them. It was just a wail. And it's like, I just felt it. It touched my deep sorrow inside me that I really didn't even know what that was about, because I didn't keep the memory of my trauma, but it touched it. And then I just could not keep from, being with that whole sound, and it just permeated my heart. And so then I went home, and I'm a little girl, so you just forget about stuff, and you're playing and all of that. But the following year, my same grandmother lost her eldest son. And so we went back to Texas from Oklahoma, and there they were in that wailing sound again. And I was reminded, and this time it was like heart-wrenching, and it was just, touching the soul and so deeply. And what I felt about it was that, now, thinking about it, it was like the way death affects us sometimes. One death reminds you of another, and then you've got it compounded, and it's just a deep, deep grief. And there was something so healing about it. I know that even though I didn't know what my sorrow was about, that it touched me and it helped me. I also didn't know that they had passed that on to me in that moment until later on. And my experience of being able to do that, and I say it being able, but there's not really an ability. There's just the moment comes. And for me, one of the times was at the river, and I just had, many grievings by that time. I was probably 30, and I just feel myself like turn into this nothing but that wail. Like, this is what this vessel is for. This sound is going to come through, and it's going to crest, and
Wow.
it's going to either go away like an ocean wave, or it's going to resurge and go again and again. And there's no starting it, stopping it. There's nothing. You're just in the moment. And the thing is, as a little girl, the closest experience I had was that all of a sudden I cried easily about so many things. There was a sensitivity to where my family called me the baby for pain. And I wasn't ashamed of it. And so I didn't know that people were ashamed of crying. I just knew it helped me. So there was nothing for me to be ashamed of. And I had plenty of other things to be ashamed of in my life, but I wasn't about that. And so, like I said, there was no stopping it. So, and then it felt good. So you're not ashamed of those things, right? So.
Amazing. It's hard to imagine in this day and age because it seems like there's no privacy to wail. I'm even in the forest in Appalachian Mountains on top of the mountain. You know, I'm on top of the mountain, and yet if I yell with my dogs, but it echoes throughout the valley, and then there's people all around. So it's like, and they have a retreat center like 5-minute walk from my house. I'm 2 retreat centers, so I can't just wail because it's hard to find that sacred space. And then on top of that, so many of us have been taught that, you know, crying is not okay, and that somewhere along the line, you know, crying just stopped being really easy for a lot of people, including myself. And it's ironic because I facilitate others to go into crying, but sometimes it's very challenging for me to I feel deep, profound emotions, rich, grieving, and I feel very much as a Pisces, as an empath, as a healer. But you know, with I don't know if it's just the way that I was raised or what, but it's very hard. That's one thing I've noted. It's very hard for me to cry. It's not that it's like the tears are in my heart, but it would be nice to be able to verbalize that as well, you know. But I think sometimes it's like I'm a safe haven for others, but sometimes, you know, everyone needs a safe haven too, right? So I think it takes either a very strong person to hold you in that space, or to be held in nature in some way, because she's so loving, so unconditionally loving, right?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, yes, being in nature in itself is also, you know, expansive and healing. And so there's that. And yet some of the times those can be the very things that move me into a space of tears or gratitude or whatever it is, those kinds of things. I mean, I'm saying tears just come so easily for me. And like when I was a little girl, I would cry when we were leaving Oklahoma to go visit our dozens of cousins. And then when I would get there, we'd be there for like, I think we got to be there for a couple of weeks. And then that made sense that I'd cry before we went home. But then going there, I'm like, what's that? You know, it happened. Maybe it was excitement, but I don't remember thinking that. It was just, and so I would just cry easily. But then crying, maybe it's a warm-up to wailing, but it feels completely different. And because it's almost, and this, I don't want to sound, I was going to say that it's a taking over, but it's not in a bad way, and not like you're losing it either. It's not that. There is that sacred part of it that, you know, you're facilitating movement of something. And sometimes it is for you, often for me it was, but it's also for others.
Wow, yeah.
It is. There was a time that one of my girlfriends was, she had taken a medicinal plant that was poisonous, and then my friend and I, who I was teaching her Reiki, and I called her and said, we need to send her Reiki. And she said, I can't, I'm doing such and such. And then, it's funny that I brought this one up because this time she had never done it. But I was with my friend, and then my friend, let me make up a name, Mary, and then Tina called me and she said, you know what, I am coming. I was in the shower and I was crying, and I told her, you were crying for me because I normally cry, and this time I wasn't.
Wow.
But it got her the message, because she was very intuitive too, that she needed to be there. So once in a while it can happen like that, but more often than not, it's like I've totally been in the space of making other people uncomfortable with the sound, only because one of the times I was crying about a family member, and my neighbor came and said, is there something I can do? And I said, why? And he said, because you have to stop this. And I said, I can't. And then he got it and he went away. But
yeah, because it's not considered acceptable. Like, mourning in general is not something we do in our society very well, nor are we taught how to mourn. We don't know. We've not been raised by this culture very well, because this culture is like, keep on smiling and keep on shining, but don't ever feel dark emotions, don't honor your truth, don't honor your truth for sure, and we don't want to hear you grieve. Okay, so just be quiet and smile, and that's just not how it is. Get over it. But that's, you can't get over anything unless you process it through your body. And this is one of the causes of dis-ease. Dis-ease is created through the lack of integration. Obviously there's many, a lack of integration, and that can go in many different directions. It can be from chemicals, like we shouldn't be integrating with chemicals that are toxic for us, but on a very much of a soul level, integrating our true feelings. We're not allowed to really feel in this culture. It's like, let me just show you how cool I am. Let me show you what car I have. Let me show you how hot my body is. That's the Instagram culture. But it's like, don't you dare show your emotions. Because if you have emotions, you're quote unquote weak. And that is the total opposite. I think you couldn't be more opposite, because if you have emotions and you feel, you're strong. It's the weak that choose to totally numb out. Or I don't want to say weak, but people with the inability, maybe they were shamed for having emotions. Maybe they were told it's not okay. If we all cried more, we would smile more too, I think, because there's a fresh freedom in a purge like that,
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. And I know you touched on the mourning part, and that is what that is a mourning wail, but that's what's sacred about it. And and you said we're not taught to mourn. And it is interesting because that is how I learned it. And nobody said anything about it. I also remember that the wailing was so loud that it also helped other people that were already crying to cry a little more, not only because someone's crying that loudly, but because that loudness covers up the sounds they're making and allows a little bit more freedom that way.
Wow.
And people, I'm like, I'm like your mom, right? I'm so much older than you are. And so even before, because my grandmother back then, she was way older than me. So they used to, around those times, hire people to be wailers.
Oh, wow.
At funerals.
Interesting.
So, you didn't even have to be a part of the family, but you would actually be hired to be there and be a wailer. And maybe that's part of it, because it helped other people. There is an element of crying for others. And so that's what I discovered too, that one time when I had a bout of, like, I just kept wailing and wailing for hours. And finally I was like, okay, I'm no longer wailing for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer mourning for myself. I'm wailing for the world. I
Mm-hmm.
had that sense. And then finally I was
Mm-hmm.
done. And it was, just such a cleansing.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah.
the beauty of it and the
Wow.
purpose of it, I think, like,
Mm-hmm.
and what a gift to pass on to humanity who has forgotten even that it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to cry.
Yeah,
Like
no
even,
kidding.
yeah, even for children that are taught
Mm-hmm.
since they're young not to cry. And I guess,
Mm-hmm.
my family calling me a baby for pain maybe wanted that too, but too
Mm-hmm.
bad.
That's kind of
It didn't
that's a
work
beautiful thing. And I could see how creating like wailing circles could be really powerful. You need a soundproof room or something like that,
that
but
way.
have people come, because it's true, when somebody is crying, then that gives you permission. And how often, our kids told, stop it, don't cry, grow up, be a big girl, be a big boy, stop it, and stop in the tracks of feeling, and or it just wasn't safe, whatever the case is. A lot of times people cry in their heart, but that's still a trapped, suppressed emotion, and that causes uh, deeper grief, because when you don't
Yes.
release the grief, it causes more pain and suffering. And it's funny because I'm a healer too. So when I do sessions, I'm always an advocate of people crying, because
Sure.
they feel like $1,000,000 when they're done. And they
Yeah.
feel amazing. They're like released, and I think I always try to create safe space for people to shed tears, because in our world, you got to put on your face and you know
Yes.
give the world your very shiniest grin. And it's like, I've never been really one to like I've always been like a little bit of a sulker. I've always had like resting bitch face ever since I was like a kid. It's just like how I am. I've just
Yeah.
been kind of a serious kid.
Yeah.
But I think there's something so beautiful about tears, warm tears coming down your face, and then the sound. I've done a lot of sound therapy, and like really
Mhm.
exploring and clean, and like even for clients, like making sounds as a transmission to clear for them too.
Yes.
And then it's interesting. I've cried many times, like in lieu of my clients, like when I'm working with them, sometimes like tears will come down because I'm like tuned into them, and it's
Yes.
easier for me to cry for others than it is for myself.
Right. That's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. And there's, you're reminding me there's so many different ways because there's the times of being so present and moved by, someone's performance. I'll, I won't,
Mm-hmm.
I won't wail at that time, but I'll cry, or tears
Yeah.
will probably do this.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we allow that and sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And another time for me that induced, and it was a healing for me, but that I was actually visiting Amma for my first time. And so one of the Holy Mothers of India, there's
Mm-hmm.
so many of them, but this was my experience that I ended up watching her bless people, and the tears were just streaming for really hours and hours before I could be blessed. And
Wow.
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so then when I was blessed, there was just this amazing recharging whenever I received the Shaktipat. It was coursing through my body. I felt it. It was just like replenishing me.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's just so many times that crying can be sacred.
Mm-hmm.
And the most recent time, once again, to wind around back to death, is my mom passed this last November 25th. And
Mm-hmm.
I got the privilege of being with her for 11 days. And when I was with her, um, Whew. Well, there was so much. I was standing for the family unity as well, and really just, of course, trying to have her be comfortable. So my sister and I were both giving her, energy treatments throughout the day. And the beautiful thing was that hospice actually let me know, the one woman that was just amazing. She was like an angel, and she just had never seen that before. That my mother was dying at home. She was not receiving any medication. And normally there was this one nurse who wanted to give her medication. And I said, why? And she said, because I don't want her to be in pain. And I said, she's only yelling because she wants you to leave her alone. She's not in pain otherwise. And so we didn't have that nurse, again. And, and mom didn't object anymore. I just knew what was happening. So there's also the miracles that happen around death, and again, the willingness that I have to be. For me, again, it was an honor to be there, and I'm so happy she allowed for that. Because when my father died, I thought, okay, yeah, I'll be there. No, he wanted to die alone. People have their preferences.
Yeah.
So on my mom's, like about 12 hours before my mom's body or heart actually stopped, my sister and I had been working on her. And there was this moment that I walked out of the room to talk to the nurse. And when I came back, because my sister called me. And I walked in, and my mom her face was looking upward. And she had not been able to hardly move. And I have to take my glasses off when I do this, because she's like looking totally upward, like her face is just as far upward as it can be. And her eyes are almost this like icy blue color, and her normal vision, her more normal eye color was like amber. And so that's different. And then all of a sudden, she just is like, smiling and like experiencing glory or something. It's just amazing. And we looked, and she had two little crystalline diamond-like tears right in the corner of her eye, both of them. And, it was really, really incredible. To be there in that moment. And for me, that was the moment her spirit passed. Her body took, whatever time it needed to finish.
Yeah.
But that was the moment. And it was just so amazing. I've never heard of it in any such way. There was no last breath. There, it was just so much its own thing.
Wow.
And I also remembered that about 20 years ago, in a reading, a woman looked at me and said, we were actually in a women's circle, and she said, your maternal grandmother is here. And I said, oh. And I had just seen her in a sweat lodge the Tuesday before, like 5 days before. And so I remembered the vision then. We were in the South, and I saw myself sitting in my grandmother's lap. And that didn't happen in my life that way. So I knew it was a vision. And so she was already connecting with me. So 5 days later, the woman says she's here. I said, what should I, what is this about? And she said, she wants you to help your mother with her spirituality, and that's all she said. And I was like, oh, great. Because mom is like that.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, I see, like she's holding on to, like to a blackboard with a with her nail breaking.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, that's why I'm asking for help. And the thing is, that was more than 20 years later. And I would check in, from time to time, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I agreed that I would help her, and I wouldn't get anything. But oh my gosh, it's like I totally know that we were all there together, assisting her to leave, and it went in a very beautiful way.
That is so sacred and so beautiful. That's such a gift to be with your beloved
Yeah.
You know, not everyone gets that experience, and there's something sacred about death and transformation. You know, none of us are going to be here forever, and I think we
Right.
all need to just, like, that should just be common sense. Like, when we start, like, we don't live forever, and that's okay. So enjoy your beloveds while you're alive. Tell people you love them. You know, my dog is, you know, we don't really know yet what's going on with her. She's had a few
Oh,
fainting spells, or she just screamed and fell over. And it's kind of, dogs don't have like heart attacks, but she's having some heart issues that I know.
mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I tell her every day, like, I love you so much. You've brought so much joy into my life, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping you're going to come through this, but whatever you choose, like, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just so important to share the love while we're alive. Like, we got to tell people, we got to
Yes.
tell our animals, we got to express that as much as possible, because you don't
Yeah.
want to leave without telling everyone how much you love them. We don't know, you know, we're just here in this moment, and we got to be present. And part of that is letting energy flow. So crying,
Yes.
sacred wailing, like, letting, you won't be able to even love another person unless you release the trauma and the pain you have, because there's no space to love if you can't release what's inside. You know, I've tried to love people or I have loved people who had a lot of trauma, but they weren't really willing to let it go. You know, and they you know, it's a choice. As a healer, I'm not responsible for fixing people or saving them. It's a conscious choice, and everyone has to step up to the plate and make it. You know, we can't force, we can only inspire people. But,
Yeah.
you know, those relationships couldn't move forward because they had no place in their heart for a person like me, you know? So as much grieving as that was, I understand everyone has their journey, and
Right.
I can only send love from a distance, because it would cause harm and toxicity for me to engage with people who aren't really aligned on the same path, you know. And but it's so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful when you can be an inspiration like you have been to your family. And, you know, I was talking to Jen earlier about how starseeds are the ones that step forward in their family lineages, and they're really the ones who are shifting the paradigm of the lineage, whether they know it or not, whether their lineage knows it or not. They're taking all the cobwebs, they're sweeping out the trauma. Like, I always say it's like being a housekeeper. Like, it's like you're keeping the house, you're clearing the house of your lineage, but you can't clean all the rooms because people won't open them for you. You can clear many of the areas that are more neutral, and that are divinely assigned to you, because whatever you're clearing, you're clearing. Just like when you're crying, it's for your lineage, it's for everyone who doesn't have the ability to do that. It's generosity of your heart, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And that's I also, when you called it generosity, it reminds me that there's certain things that I've gone through when people can say that was courageous.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed about courage, or about someone saying that, is that courage also seems like it shows up to others as courage, but in the moment, it
Mm-hmm.
just seems like, oh, well, I could have done nothing else but this. Now, I don't say that to them, but I'm completely present to that. That in the moment that you know this is what there is to do, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all there is to it, often someone else will view that
Mm-hmm.
as a courageous act. Like
Mm-hmm.
that somehow that's in there together, the generosity,
Mm-hmm.
and then the reflection looks like courage. So yeah, it's
Vulnerability is
really
courage,
amazing.
right? I mean, I think
It takes,
vulnerability is such courage to feel is to be courageous. I don't think it's courageous to shut your emotions down and be dead inside. That's not
Right.
very courageous at all. You know, I
Right.
mean, I understand that it's survival at certain points in your life, right? We get that. But then you grow up and you're like, am I going to be courageous enough to release this baggage? Because you know, it's not, it's holding up a lot of bandwidth here. So the courage is to feel and to let that dam flow open and release and let go. And some people get so attached to that they don't want to let it go, right?
Yeah, there's periods of that. And that's what it sounds more like to me. It's more like the process, varies so much individually, and that we can never know the timing for someone else. And that, there have been plenty of moments during 12 years of working through a molestation of mine, that I wanted it to be thorough, the cleansing of it. And I had no idea how long it was going to take. And believe me, I was sick of it for many, many different times. And it made me sick, off balance, you name it. Then there was a period where it sounds a little bit like what you're talking about, that I finally recognized that it had become like practice so much that I think it also gets called depression. And it is an expression of depression. But for me, it was like, oh, am I dwelling now? And the dwelling of it was like, no, that was my signal of like, no, you're done. Now and done in such a way enough to move on a bit more for whatever was next, because there were many times of thinking, oh, that's it. And then something would come around again. And that's the other thing. When it came around again, it's not the same thing. The clearing has already happened. The next time it comes around, we're at a little bit higher level.
That's beautiful.
But we see it and we're like, oh, here it is again. No, not exactly the same. We have to celebrate that it isn't. It can feel similar, but keep the movement coming. We have to acknowledge that it is taking what it takes, is what I say. Yeah.
It's so true. That's beautiful. Yeah, it takes commitment. It takes, I always say the people that have come to me for healing are the most courageous people in the world, because they're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to open up and trust that it's possible to start releasing and healing. And to me, that is profound courage. I am in awe of people who step onto the journey of healing, because so many choose not to. And so I'm always proud for them that they're making a different choice, that they are stepping into a different timeline, one where they're actually reshaping the past and the future, and really reclaiming the inner alchemist, and that's part of the holy whale, is that, that shakes up the whole timeline. And, we're here to do that. You can do that through, there's many ways to express, like through the drumming, through the sound, through the music, through the dance. We can find ways to heal. And the drumming, the sound of the drum, the beating, the repetitiveness, the trance, and then the crying and the wailing, it's all part of this journey of releasing trauma. We're coming to a place on earth where we're needing to lighten this earth up. We have to start doing this release work. It is not like, oh, it's an option. It's for many, it's no longer an option. It's like, we have to do this. We're called to do this. Why? Yeah, because it's part of healing this planetary pain. I recall actually in my 20s, I used to cry actually for the planet. I remember now, I would just like be bawling, and I'm like, and then my boyfriend was like, what are you crying about? And I'm like, there's so much pain in this world. And I was just releasing because, being a channel, you feel everything.
Yeah.
It's not that you are selective, like, I just want to feel this and I feel this. You know, it's amazing how some people can be selective, but unfortunately for an empath, we're sort of like the children that are here to feel it all and to clear, and not just be a victim to the feeling, but to be transmuters, alchemists, starseed, light workers, light bearers, anchors of the divine, clearers of this trauma, clearing through our own physical emanation of our body, and then activating the emanation of the divine with us. This is possible. This is real. This is cellular DNA work, and that's what Wailing, it's clearing the DNA. We are recoding the DNA, and that's what we are. We're consciously reshaping our lineage, our destiny, our future, and our past as well. So I love that you found the power of sacred wailing and giving people permission to cry, to wail, to release, to let go.
Yeah, and you just brought up how I don't know, what I got a little bit reminded of was that there was that kind of a clearing, and actually then almost the same year I received my first Holy Communion, because I was raised Catholic, and I also share my birthday with which is August 15th, and it happens to be when Mother Mary assumed her body. And that's really all I know, because again, I don't recognize myself as Catholic. And so, but I do know that about my birthday. And so I had a connection to her, and I already had that connection to the sacred, as I was saying. So during my first Holy Communion, which I did not do in a group, and that's always done in a group, but it happened that my family was on vacation, so my mom said, "You're going to do it alone." And so I came back, and when she wanted to take pictures of me afterwards, we went to the smaller chapel that had really beautiful Spanish elements to it, and so I knelt and just boom, connected with Mary, and felt this warm sensation coming, like, between, I was just gazing at the beautiful statue, because she was always beautiful to me.
Yes.
And my mom took the picture, and then once again, little girl, go off and forget all about it. And a few weeks later, she showed me the picture, and you can see the beam of the energy. Yeah. And so I know it took me, again, later to recognize that was its own transmission, and it's called Mother Divine Essence. And so it's like, another opening. And so it's like I look for those opportunities of like, where am I being guided? And I don't even know that. I just am being guided all, throughout my life. And so then, that becomes, the ultimate book or something sometime, whatever. But in the meantime, it's just like appreciating all those gifts and synchronicities and the sensitivity. That's what triggered that memory for me, because we're sensitive as children, but for me there was also that dichotomy of like I was also numbing a part of my life.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be on the planet. I already knew what it was to be to be consoled and comforted, and it was like, not even mad that we were here. I had my joy and like that, but just still kind of in that fantasy spacey place. So
I wouldn't call it fantasies. I think it's a star child quality. I mean, I was a star child, and I was sort of always gazing into what people would say I was a space cadet, but I was looking at emanations of light all around me. I could see things people couldn't see, and I still see things people can't see. And that's not, just because someone can't see it doesn't mean it's not there,
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was a sensing, so I didn't have the visual of it that often. But yeah, and again, kind of like we were talking about crying or death, that people can relate to both of those in an off way. Yeah, people can say, "Oh, you're in La La Land," and certainly I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's pretty good."
You're like, not bad. I'm doing pretty good here. I love it. And, I really love that about you. You do carry Mother Mary codes within you, and that's so much part of who you are. And it's so lovable about you. Like, I love being in your field. And, I also love Mother Mary so much. I go into churches and I like to just be with her presence. The Great Mother, I've always been drawn to the Great Mother, that unconditional love. And then I was, Kuan Yin has been swirling around me my whole life, but Kuan Yin is I would say she is another version of Mother Mary. I know it's hard to explain, but you have to understand, like, for East and West, there's different emanations of the Divine Mother, the unconditionally loving feminine presence, right?
Yeah. Well, even within the Catholic Church, Mother Mary has different appearances in different ways. And so they each have different names for where she appeared and all of that. So,
yeah,
it makes sense that same essence is, showing up in another sacred religion, really.
Yeah.
And because it is so important for the planet to have that mother essence.
Yeah, that's it.
Represented in a feminine body.
It is.
Yeah,
it
is Mother Earth. So.
And I really relate to the light emanations, because that's, for me, the divine feminine, Kuan Yin, and the goddesses have always shown up to me as sort of light emanations in a way. That, it's not so much like the clothes they wear, and like it's really the essence. It's really the pure, what I gather, what I feel, what I understand is it's the purest, unprocessed, the most pure divine energy. And it's the greatest gift I've ever had is to encounter these majestic beings and realizing, wow, I'm so happy you're in existence, because it would be such a boring life if you were not here. This would be a really big tragedy. That magic. So
there are people here that are without that, but I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And to have your heart open, one thing I think is never to lose your innocence, no matter what has happened. There is that sweet innocence inside every one of us. And it's only with the eyes of the innocent that we are able to see these magical things. I think it's been through my eyes of curiosity and pure innocence that I've had these encounters with the divine. They were never when I was like angry or we have different levels and different layers of beingness, right? So it's only in the openness that I've been able to experience that treasure.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to say it, because for me, like, each of the moments, it's been it kind of feels like, just thinking back, like reflecting back, it's kind of like that was the opening. And actually it's a really great word to use that just simplifies it. As empaths, as sensitives, as psychics, whatever, we're open. Basically, we're open.
Yeah.
And and I think, maybe that's a little easier for people to relate to, that don't have an idea of what it could be like.
It's a gift. Being open. Many times I've cursed that feeling of like I'm open, and I've tried to shut down, I'm out, and really run from my gift and myself, because it's really abandoning of the self when we leave that part, but I try desperately to not engage, because I was like, this world is not for people like me. So I don't want to be like me. I want to be like what I'm seeing outside of me. But trying to be like I was outside, what I saw, that was a pure disaster. I was like, let me go back to being me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I had to experience that. I tried to do the Barbie thing and get the breast implants and try to be that emanation of the fake goddess, what I call the fake goddess. And I was like, oh, no. You're not more protected as a fake goddess. You're just, it's actually quite the opposite. And I said, no, my divine protection comes from the divine goddess, the holy goddess, the sacred. I'm going back to who I am, to my roots. And I don't really care at this point what anyone thinks. They can think whatever they want, because we're all going to see each other through the eyes of our experiences, our perspective, our limitations, and our blocks. So someone's blocked, they can only project their block upon you. If someone's open, they can tap into the higher self and see that higher self within you. It's always a reflection of where people are. So I've learned to not take it so personal. It's not about you. It's not about me. We are where we are. And I can only be the very best version of myself and keep improving and keep shifting and changing and evolving. That's the name of the game. This is the Earth School. This is the ultimate PhD academy. Okay? We're all here getting our masters so we can get our galactic passport and do other things. But in the meantime, we're going to be here 100% committed to being here. And that's what I tell all Starseeds and people that are like, oh, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, I get it. I've been there so many times where I'm like, I'm done. But I've made a decision to fully commit to being here in this experience, whatever shows up. I'm going to be present. I want to show up even more in myself. And part of that holy wailing is showing up fully, because being present in the deepest way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Since you mentioned the wailing again, I think I might have said it, but it was like, becoming the vessel for it to come through. And my name, Selma, means vessel. So I get to be the vessel for energy to come through anyway, then for the wailing to come through, and I also make vessels that are out of the pottery. And so it's just like I totally was given that name, just being named after my mom's girlfriend. And but I ended up living up to it, even though when I was a kid it just was too odd. It's still not that common, but it's very, very suiting. So
it's so beautiful. And I love how we get to grow into who we are. I can relate to that. Selma is very rare, but it's so divine and fitting, because what you embody through you is so much divinity and so much of the Mother Mary and all of that beauty. And as a channel, you're always tuned in and channeling the Raven energy too. And we grow into who we are. That's why it's important for young people to know, don't give up. Like, especially in the early ages, when you're still developing, we have a long ways to go. To know yourself is never gonna fully happen. We're always learning more about who we are and what we're not. And if we would have given up when we were young just because we didn't quote unquote fit in, what a disaster, what a waste, and I mean, I got teased so much for my name. I got teased for everything, for the way I looked, for my lips. They were considered big, and just, everything was odd. So it wasn't really odd, actually. It was divine, but in the culture I was in, it was not quote unquote cool, right? So I was called like Radhaa Paints, and I was like, I hate my name. I was like, I wanted to be called Rose. That's the name I wanted more than anything. I was like, please just call me Rose. But nobody called me Rose. They were like, Radhaa Paints, Radhaa Paints. And I was like, but then, you know, now I'm like, she's the goddess of love and longing and devotion. I'm like, oh, how fitting.
And Radhaa Rose sounds pretty good.
Yes, yes. I tried changing my name. I wrote Rose on all my papers, and they're like, who is Rose? And I'm like, it's me. And they're like, no. So I was, I could never manage to change my name as a kid, but now I have to truly love and accept it. And, you know, that's the beauty of life. Everything comes full circle. What seems like a curse becomes a blessing.
Yes.
And we must count our blessings. Life is the greatest gift. That's why we live it, and that's why we feel it, and that's how we breathe it. And there's no shame in feeling any emotions. So I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing the beauty and the gift of holy wailing. Maybe one day you'll put on a retreat and we can all go to like Joshua Tree and, you know, wail it out. That'd be yummy. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful.
I love women's retreats for sure. Part of that is amazing. So
yeah. Well, thank you. Is this going to be part of your chapter?
It is.
Starseed? Okay, beautiful.
Well, yeah. I mean, it will be part of the chapter, and it is about death, because I do think, for whatever reason, that, you know, the way I look at death is so, you know, not how most people do. The same for crying. The same for many things in my life. So anyway, but
we need some new perspective. We need that. We need some new perspectives. We need new teachings. We need new understanding, because when tragedy occurs, it's like we don't know how to hold that. And you know,
the sacredness of it, I also compared to birth, because I did study midwifery and I did have a home birth, and there's just this, you know, the veils are thin at both times, and it's not so much that people are afraid of birth. They might be, but we certainly don't think of it as a sacred time necessarily.
And it is. Bringing a child into this world, through your vessel. What could be more sacred than that?
Totally.
That's holy.
And that reminds me that there is nothing more powerful than a group of women, unless it's a group of pregnant women.
Ooh, wow. I love pregnant women. They're so beautiful. And I always want to touch their belly. Can I touch your belly?
Exactly.
All that life. Oh, it's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that aspect of your chapter, and, you know, giving people permission to cry. We all need to allow ourselves to let those beautiful tears flow. It does not make you weak. It makes you strong enough that you can be in your truth, your emotions, and that you don't have to numb out. That may be the easy path at certain times, but we all have to pay the price for that numbing, because then we have to actually we have to deal with the repercussions of it, whether that be stored trauma in the body, or it'll come up as a symptom no matter what. We cannot escape. The only way out is through. So thank you for coming on and sharing your courage, your love, your Mother Mary emanation, and look forward to talking to you soon. So many blessings and so much love to you all. Thank you for joining us on Galactic Goddess Podcast and TV. Mwah.